Over the past few years, I've tried to branch out and read comics that weren't just from the big two publishers. That led me right to Image Comics. I started by reading some of the most famous works from Image, and I loved all of them. The Walking Dead, Saga, Invincible, and even Sex Criminals. For the record, Sex Criminals' title is just to get people talking about it. The book is actually super good, I promise. Eventually, I found out about a series called Extremity. I never heard of it before, but I saw a panel posted in an out-of-context comic group on Facebook from the series, and I knew I had to read it. I looked into Extremity and found out it was written and drawn by the same person, Daniel Warren Johnson. Being impressed by the stuff I was seeing from Extremity, I bought the trade paperbacks and I was hooked. This led me to reading and loving Extremity, more on that later, and looking for any other series this guy might have worked on. Long story short, I became obsessed. His art style was so kinetic, I could practically feel the wind coming off the page. His writing is also extremely well done. Each character's voice and tone is distinct, and DWJ knows just when to slow down and hit you with a gut punch. On another quick note, Johnson very frequently works with colorist Mike Spicer, and when these two work together, you get some of the most memorable and animated comic book panels ever made. Just wanted to make sure that I mentioned Spicer in this video, because if he went uncredited, that would have been a travesty. This video is basically going to be my excuse to gush about one of my favorite comic book creators. So this will be different than the So You Want to Read series, as I'll be doing an overview of each series and more or less trying to tell you guys why they're awesome. This video will basically be spoiler free because I want whoever watches this to be hooked and to go out and buy whichever of these series sounds good to you. Spoiler, they're all fantastic and worth the read. First up, I want to talk about one of Johnson's earliest works. Sure, the name Space Mullet is silly. Space Mullet pleasantly surprised me when I found out how much heart this comic actually has. I did a little bit of research before reading the book, and as it turns out, this is one of Johnson's first published books, and was initially released in the form of a webcomic. If you like Firefly, Saga, or Cowboy Bebop, this will be right up your alley. The scope of this story is small, as we watch our characters Jonah and Alpheus go on an adventure that slowly grows their found family. The theming and setting greatly remind me of Cowboy Bebop, but Space Mullet stands on its own as it has a grim world filled with a more nihilistic take on what this near-future sci-fi could look like. Now, imagine Cowboy Bebop, but instead of the cool underground Yakuza stuff, you get war crimes. While the inspiration is obvious, Space Mullet has distinct style and substance to back it up. As far as I could tell, there was only ever 8 chapters written for Space Mullet, while there have been some remaster collections sold in the past few years. This might not be as fleshed out as Johnson's other works, considering that's unfinished, but you can see his writing and art improve over the course of this book, and it's still a great read start to finish. Also, you can read the full thing at space-mullet.com. I want you to imagine a story that's so cool that it feels like Studio Ghibli meeting Mad Max right in the middle.
Get up. You are the future ABBA and you will act accordingly. No weakness. Not like last time.
I won't hesitate again. I know what to do. I'm just scared.
As am I. But when the time comes, think. And remember. Thank you, soldier. What they did to your sister. What they did to your mother. To me.
The high-octane energy of Extremity immediately captures anybody that decides to pick up the book. We're dropped into the post-apocalyptic war between the Roto and the Paznina. Here is where I like to point out DWJ's distinct art style. He uses these thick lines to outline any important objects in frame, but it never feels rigid. I think this is largely because every single character has a unique body, face, and hairstyle. Another thing that breaks up the pages are the incredibly detailed backgrounds that Johnson puts in almost every single panel. He knows just when to pull it back and showcase a wide shot with a ton of extra detail thrown in. The thing that truly got me into Extremity though were the jaw-dropping 2-page spreads. Throughout this video, I'll mention the emotional depths that DWJ hits. While a lot of other comics on here talk about loss, moving on with grief, and finding purpose, Extremity goes out of its way to talk about the circle of suffering that comes from something like that. Grief isn't yours alone. It gets passed on to someone else. For a story that features flying jet bikes, giant mantises, and a Mad Max level of brutality, Johnson knows when to pull back and show you what's really happening under the hood. Now, onto the story of Extremity. Thea is the daughter of the leader of her clan, the Roto. The book opens with a traumatic showcase of the Paznina clan attacking Thea's home. She was defined by her ability as an artist, but that was taken from her. Instead of dreaming for a better life, Thea can only think of revenge. We start this story right in the middle of a Roto ambush on the Paznina home. This is the launching pad for the events of the series. We see Thea and her clan go to war. While we explore this frankly insane world, we start to see what the effects of perpetual violence and war can do to someone. If you like awesome action set pieces, war stories, and absolute emotional gut punches, check this one out.
Hey, Ugly. Yeah, I'm talking to you. There will be no baby eating on my watch. What the heck you doing? We've tried everything. You're gonna get yourself killed. I don't need weapons, officer. I brought metal. Hello, Jake.
You ever want condensed liquid IV metal? Then Murder Falcon is for you. God, this series is sick. Jake's life is in the dumpster. Him and his wife are separated, he doesn't talk to his friends, and his band is broken up. But what lifts him up from that? What gives him purpose? Metal. Growing up as a metalhead, this series really resonated with me. Screaming "metal will destroy all evil" is absolutely something a younger version of me would have done at a metal show. DWJ just gets it. You can tell this story was crafted by someone with a true love and passion for the genre. While I am going to avoid spoilers, there is so many things in this series that call back to the classic 80s hair metal. Murder Falcon features the band Bruticus and some of their friends. Each musician in the story has a magical instrument that connects them to a mystical realm called the Metal. The musicians use these instruments to summon creatures, they're basically stands, to fight the forces of evil, screaming into the void. Don't let the title and immaculate vibes fool you though. The amount of heart that DWJ puts into his characters is actually quite admirable. Every one of our characters starts to come together over the course of the first half of the series. After that, we shift tones to where everyone needs to work through their trauma together and find their purpose. Let me tell you, I can't finish this series, or most on this list if I'm being honest, without crying. This is what fully sold me on Johnson as a writer as well as an artist. Sure, the pictures are pretty, but Johnson knows clearly how to build emotional tension throughout these often silly but epic settings. I know that I mentioned comic creators wanting to make money off their creations in the Saga video, but how on earth is there not a Murder Falcon cartoon yet? Like seriously, this thing would print money. Put Genndy Tartakovsky or somebody else on that and put out a 10-episode season where you could cover the entire series. There is so much potential for this in an animation format, especially because of the musical aspect that's obviously apparent. Mini tangent aside, I love this series. Moving on. Wonder Woman Dead Earth is an Elseworld story written and illustrated by Johnson once again. This time we see Wonder Woman in the apocalypse trying to lead a pilgrimage of survivors to Themyscira. After a mysterious event called the Great Fire centuries ago razed the Earth, Diana wakes up and finds a group of young humans. This 4-page series features irradiated creatures and the crew of Camp New Hope trying to survive while being led by Diana. While this isn't my favorite on this list, this was still a really cool and surprisingly dark turn for a Wonder Woman comic. That being said, this is still metal as fuck. If you want to see what would happen if Wonder Woman was the only hero left on a dying Earth, I'd say to pick this up today. As this is the shortest series on this list, being 4 issues, I can't get into it too much without revealing some spoilers, plot elements, but this is just a really, really cool read. Do you want to watch an alien super being imbued with the power of Asgard pile drive a fire demon off a church roof? Yeah, I thought so. Here's Beta Ray Bill. This cult Marvel character gets refreshed by DWJ and dovetails from the King in Black event. Of course, the art is incredible, and the first issue opens with Asgard defending itself against the symbiote-infected Fing Fang Foom. As this battle commences, we get treated to some awesome wrestling-inspired action as the Guardians fend off Foom. Thor joins in just as Bill makes his last stand against the dragon and steals his glory. This story takes place shortly after Thor and Bill fought, and Bill lost the ability to transform back into his human form. So Thor finishing the fight really stings Bill. At the Asgardian afterparty, Bill and Sif were about to spend the night together when Sif asks, "So, how does this work?" Sif assumed that Bill's form was able to change back at night. The awkward conversation ends up with Bill saying, "Sif, please, I understand. I am not blind." He heads towards his ship, not feeling like his home is truly home for him anymore. He heads to his ship, Scuttlebutt. While leaving Asgard, Thor stops him and the two have an argument. It ends with Thor telling Bill that it's just who he is, and Bill leaves to discover how to revert back to his normal form. He leaves to find Odin. This series is only 5 issues long, but throughout the runtime you get plenty of bromance, cool action, and our hero trying to discover his self-worth. As I said before, DWJ manages to make hard-hitting scenes in these Saturday morning cartoon-styled comics. While I like to avoid spoilers, the ending panel for this series is actually very haunting.
Jacob, your daughter. She has the fire. True, raw, unbridled talent.
Lona's going to the top. She's got a big move planned.
She's got what her mom had. And you know it.
What a moonsault by Lona Steel Rose.
1, 2, 3.
Now, I know I've already said it a couple times in this video, but this comic is something special. Daniel Warren Johnson writes about a lot of loss, grief, and finding yourself in the world. Do a Powerbomb is probably his best work yet, and it's because he handles all of these things in real but still unexpected ways. Sure, you could like this hype wrestling and be like, hey, that's a really hype wrestling comic, but this is probably Johnson's most thought-provoking work on top of that. We see Lona Steel Rose and Cobra Sun compete in a Magic Wrestling tournament for a chance to bring back Lona's mom, Yua, back to life. The reason for Cobra Sun teaming up with Lona? Years ago, Cobra Sun was fighting Yua in a wrestling match almost 2 decades prior, but his foot slipped. In a tragic accident, Yua died right in front of her daughter. Fast forward over the years, and Lona is now on her own wrestling while Cobra Sun takes cheap grudge matches to pay the bills, and because he feels guilty about what happens. But then they get approached by Necroton, an ancient necromancer that has an affinity for pro wrestling. They receive the offer to team up in order to win back the life of someone that has left this world. Obviously, they accept the offer, and thus begins the most gnarly tournament arc I think I've ever seen. Without getting too depressing in this video, this came out right at the perfect time for me. This story handles loss and how the memories we hold on to can shape who we become. So thank you, Daniel, for ending the story in the most beautiful way possible.
I see why I had to betray you. You didn't betray me. You betrayed yourself. No, Optimus!
So, the Bay movies really suck, huh? I have a funky little worm brain, so I'm not immune to wrestling, anime shit, heavy metal stand users, or transforming robots. Skybound is an imprint from Image Comics, and it recently launched the Energon universe. This is a crossover universe between the Transformers, G.I. Joe, and Robert Kirkman's Void Rivals. Listen, I really liked the Bayformer movies growing up, but other than that, I wasn't obsessed with Transformers like other kids were. But, being a fanboy that I am, I saw that DWJ was going to be on the new Transformers book, and that screwy, slimy lizard brain of mine jumped into overdrive. As a guy that always thought, yeah, you know, Transformers are cool, I now think
Lead me to paradise, Optimus Prime. Glory to Cybertron.
The art is incredible, and Johnson does an awesome job reintroducing the Autobots to be not war criminals. We see our fearless leader, Optimus, always try to find peace, and the rest of the supporting cast are also super interesting. Even within the different factions, you can see that everyone has their own agendas and wants different things out of their life. One thing that I remember about the various Transformer cartoons from my childhood is that the Decepticons are basically backstabbing, pedantic pieces of shit, and yeah, that's true here too. It's really fun to see. While I may not be able to fully appreciate this yet, I love where it's going, and there's still plenty more story to come along in the coming months. That being said, DWJ does what he does best with this. Awesome art, accompanied by some jaw-droppingly emotional moments, even early into this series. I think the reason that I don't have too much to say about this yet is because, to my knowledge, this is the first long-form series that DWJ has done, and most of his other comics in this video are between 8 and 12 issues, but as of writing, there are only 8 issues of Transformers, and it seems to be just starting. That being said, I'm wicked excited for more. Well, that was my tribute to Daniel Warren Johnson, comics' most exciting new creator. From his creator-owned works to the stuff he's done for Marvel and DC, I truly believe he'll go down as an incredible comic book creator that will be genre-defining just a few short years from now. Thank you for watching. As you know, I've been Jared, and you've been wonderful. What's your favorite DWJ book? Let me know in the comments below. And as per usual, if you enjoy what you're watching, check out our other videos and click on that subscribe button. See you next time.